Word of humanity's real identity raced through the galaxy like wildfire, impossible to contain. Within mere hours of Jake Morrison's bombshell at the Council, every major civilization learned the truth. Humans weren't the gentle newcomers they seemed to be. The species, who'd welcome them as junior partners now, understood they'd been living under the watchful eye of beings whose power reached back through thousands of years. General Thex Morin of the Dracor hegemony moved first. The proud military commander couldn't stomach the idea that his people had been managed like youngsters by creatures he thought were beneath him. Less than 6 hours after discovering the truth, he assembled the biggest war fleet Dracor history had ever seen. "We won't kneel to these liars," Thex Morin declared to his officers. 10,000 ships will prove to these humans that the Dracor bow to nobody. The enormous armada gathered at the Sol system's edge, loaded with weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Thex Morin's strategy was straightforward. Show Dracor might by striking Earth head-on. If humans were as mighty as they claimed, they'd have to show their real power to save their homeworld. But when the Dracor fleet arrived at Earth's solar system, they encountered something completely baffling. Just 3 humans blocked their path to the planet they wanted to devastate. Captain Julie Adams waited in a single tiny vessel named the Hope. Her craft looked identical to any other human patrol ship, with ordinary shields and basic weapons that couldn't threaten the massive Dracor fleet. Dr. Alex Turner worked some kind of equipment from what seemed like an empty patch of space. His gear was invisible to Dracor sensors, though energy readings revealed he was controlling forces that shouldn't be possible. Commander Gary Phillips ran the defense from Earth's surface, transmitting messages to places that Dracor scanners insisted held nothing except vacuum and space dust. 3 humans, Thex Morin snarled at his bridge crew. They sent 3 humans against 10,000 Dracor warships. This is offensive. But Captain Adams opened a channel with a voice that held unexpected power. "General Thex Morin, you've brought violence to a peaceful place. We're asking you to reconsider." "You dare give us orders?" Thex Morin bellowed. "We are 10,000 strong. You are 3. Numbers mean nothing when you're facing gardeners who've been caring for this galaxy since before your species discovered fire," Julie responded calmly. The battle started when Thex Morin commanded his entire fleet to open fire. 10,000 Dracor ships attacked simultaneously, releasing enough power to wipe out a dozen worlds. The combined firepower of the greatest military force in known space rushed toward the 3 humans defending Earth. What followed lasted precisely 14 minutes and transformed galactic history forever. Julie's small ship didn't avoid the incoming weapons. Instead, she simply waved one hand, and the energy blasts bent away from their targets as though space itself had twisted. The attacks that should have vaporized her vessel harmlessly scattered into the cosmic background. Dr. Turner activated his reality-bending equipment, and half the Dracor fleet suddenly found themselves floating in empty space, millions of kilometers from where they'd been moments earlier. Their ships remained undamaged but completely confused, as though someone had simply relocated them without using any technology the Dracor could recognize. Commander Phillips directed responses from installations that appeared out of nowhere. Defense platforms that had been hidden as asteroids and comets revealed themselves, but they didn't strike back. Instead, they created fields that disabled Dracor weapons without harming the ships or crews. "Impossible," Thex Morin breathed as he witnessed his mighty fleet being neutralized by forces he couldn't grasp. The surviving Dracor ships discovered their navigation systems replaced with new coordinates and a courteous message. "Thank you for visiting the Sol system. We recommend you rethink your approach to interstellar relations. Your ships have been moved to the galactic edge for your protection. Please take time to consider what kind of galaxy you want to live in." When the 14-minute encounter ended, not a single Dracor had died or even been hurt. Their ships worked fine and their crews were healthy. They'd simply been moved to a location where they couldn't threaten Earth or anyone else anymore. The psychological damage was crushing. The most feared military power in the galaxy had been handled like youngsters throwing a tantrum. Even worse, the humans had done it without showing anger or cruelty. They'd treated the attack like a minor problem that needed gentle management. Meanwhile, the full extent of human infrastructure was revealing itself throughout the galaxy. Monitoring stations that had been disguised as moons for thousands of years started broadcasting openly. Defense platforms hidden inside stellar phenomena showed themselves. Entire artificial worlds that had seemed to be natural planets revealed their actual purpose. The parallel civilization that humans had built in secret was enormous beyond comprehension. They'd been running a shadow government spanning the entire galaxy, keeping peace through methods so subtle that other species had never realized they were being protected. Dr. Patricia Lee worked with newly awakened human scientists to document their real capabilities. The technology they possessed could reshape matter at the quantum level, bend space and time, and communicate instantly across any distance. "We built all of this over 12,000 years, Patricia explained to a gathering of human colony leaders. Every time a species developed weapons that could threaten galactic stability, we created countermeasures. Every time a civilization showed aggressive tendencies, we steered them toward cooperation. But the most remarkable aspect of human intervention was its gentleness. They'd never conquered or enslaved other species. Instead, they'd carefully shaped galactic culture to encourage values that humans shared: cooperation, protecting the weak, and sustainable development. Ambassador Jake Morrison addressed the frightened Galactic Council with humanity's explanation for everything that had happened. "We apologize for the deception, but it was necessary. You needed to develop your own civilizations naturally without knowing you were being protected." "Protected from what?" demanded the Zenturi representative. "From the things that live in the dark between galaxies," Jake replied quietly. "From species that view all biological life as something to consume. From entities that exist in dimensions you can't imagine. We've been fighting these threats for thousands of years while you grew strong enough to eventually help us." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't been playing games with galactic civilization. They'd been preparing other species for a larger conflict that most beings couldn't even understand. "The universe isn't a safe place," Jake continued. "But this galaxy has been safe because we made it safe. We eliminated internal threats so that all species could focus on growing and learning instead of fighting each other." The evidence was crushing. Every major positive development in galactic history could be traced to subtle human guidance. The formation of stable trade routes, the prevention of extinction events, the mysterious disappearance of various galactic threats, all had been human intervention disguised as natural occurrence. Species that should have wiped each other out had instead learned cooperation. Civilizations that should have collapsed from internal conflicts had found peaceful solutions. Aggressive races that threatened their neighbors had simply vanished, usually without anyone realizing they'd ever existed. Most frightening of all was the realization that humans had been gently programming other species to develop their own versions of human values. The galaxy hadn't naturally evolved toward peace and cooperation. It had been carefully guided by beings who understood that survival required everyone working together. As the truth settled in, panic gave way to a different kind of fear. The terror wasn't that humans were monsters who might destroy galactic civilization. The terror was that they were exactly what they appeared to be: infinitely patient gardeners who'd spent 12,000 years raising other species like beloved children. The council faced a new reality. They weren't independent civilizations sharing space. They were participants in humanity's grand experiment in creating a peaceful galactic community. Every choice they'd made, every cultural value they held dear, had been influenced by humans working behind the scenes. But Jake's final revelation was the most disturbing of all. "Our work isn't finished," he said quietly. "Phase 4 is about to begin. The galaxy is strong enough now to face what's coming from outside. We hope you're ready to help us protect everything we've built together." The message that went out to every world in the galaxy was simple but earth-shaking. Earth's children have grown wise. The shepherds are proud. Phase 4 authorized. Welcome to the real galaxy. For the first time in 12,000 years, humanity was ready to stop hiding and face the future openly. The question was whether the galaxy they'd so carefully nurtured was ready to face it with them. Keeper Zoth Kanesh requested an emergency meeting with Ambassador Jake Morrison. The ancient Eldera had decided that the truth could no longer be hidden. When Jake arrived at the Keeper's private chambers deep beneath the council building, he found Zoth Kanesh surrounded by thousands of data crystals and ancient records. "Ambassador Morrison, we need to discuss your species," Zoth said in his slow, careful voice. "I've discovered things that change everything we know about human history." Jake sat down across from the old Keeper, feeling strangely calm despite the serious tone. "What kind of things?" Zoth Kanesh activated a holographic display that showed star charts spanning 12,000 years. "Your people appear in our oldest records long before your supposed first contact with galactic civilization. You're not newcomers to the stars, Jake Morrison. You're their gardeners." As Zoth Kanesh spoke, something began stirring in Jake's mind. Memories that weren't his own started surfacing. He saw flashes of ancient battles, vast construction projects among the stars, and meetings with species that had been extinct for millennia. "The Souljin," Jake whispered, surprising himself. "We called ourselves the Souljin back then." "You remember," Zoth Kanesh said with satisfaction. "The genetic locks are beginning to release. Your people have been sleeping for thousands of years, waiting for the right time to wake up." Meanwhile, across human space, similar awakenings were occurring. Admiral Chris Hamilton was in his office reviewing fleet reports when activation codes began appearing on his computer screen. The codes made no sense according to any human database, but somehow Chris knew exactly what they meant. He input the codes without hesitation, and immediately his computer began connecting to systems that weren't supposed to exist. Hidden networks spanning the entire galaxy came online, revealing the true extent of human presence in space. Ships that had been disguised as asteroids for thousands of years began transmitting identification signals. Weapon platforms that appeared to be natural stellar phenomena started responding to commands. An entire shadow fleet that had been dormant for millennia was waking up. "This is impossible," Chris muttered as he watched the displays fill with vessel signatures. "We have 10,000 times more ships than any official record shows." But the knowledge flowing into his mind told him it wasn't impossible at all. Humans had built this fleet over thousands of years, then hidden it away when their work was done. Now the galaxy needed its shepherds again. Dr. Patricia Lee was working in her laboratory when new information began flooding her computer systems. The data contained complete historical records of humanity's real role in galactic civilization. According to these files, humans hadn't evolved naturally on Earth. They'd been created, or had created themselves, to serve as cosmic gardeners. Their purpose was to nurture life throughout the galaxy and eliminate threats to biological diversity. Every human instinct toward cooperation, protection of the weak, and peaceful problem-solving was part of this deeper programming. "We're not just a species," Patricia whispered as she read through the files. "We're a tool designed to maintain galactic stability." The records showed that humans had spent thousands of years eliminating dangerous species, guiding the evolution of others, and carefully cultivating a stable interstellar community. When their work was finished, they'd voluntarily entered a kind of cultural hibernation. They'd deliberately forgotten their true nature, allowing their civilization to develop normally while their deeper programming remained dormant. Only when the galaxy was ready would the shepherds remember their purpose and reveal themselves. Captain Sandra Blake found herself commanding vessels she'd never seen before, but somehow knew how to operate perfectly. Her crew discovered they possessed tactical knowledge spanning eons, inherited memories of campaigns against threats that existed between galaxies. "Captain, these weapon systems," reported her tactical officer, Randy Cooper. "I know how to use them, but they're not in any of our training manuals. It's like the knowledge was always there, just waiting." The ships themselves were marvels of technology that surpassed anything currently known to exist. They could manipulate reality on a fundamental level, travel through dimensions that normal physics said were impossible to reach, and coordinate actions across thousands of light years in real time. Most frightening of all was the realization that these weren't new capabilities. Humans had possessed this technology for millennia, but had chosen to hide it and live as though they were just another primitive species developing naturally. The scope of the deception became clear as more systems came online. Humans had been actively managing galactic civilization for thousands of years while pretending to be newcomers. Every act of kindness, every rescue mission, every peaceful negotiation had been the unconscious expression of their true programming. Dr. Kevin Wright experienced the most dramatic awakening. During a routine diplomatic meeting, he suddenly began speaking in languages that hadn't been used for thousands of years. The alien delegates recognized the ancient tongues and responded with reverence instead of confusion. "You are the shepherds," whispered the Vorthak representative. "Our oldest prophecies spoke of your return. We've been waiting." Kevin found himself accessing knowledge about every species in the galaxy that went far beyond anything in human databases. He knew their histories, their cultures, their genetic patterns, and their potential futures. Most importantly, he understood how each species fit into the larger pattern of galactic civilization. "We guided your development," Kevin heard himself saying. "We eliminated the threats that would have destroyed you. We taught you cooperation without you knowing you were being taught." The truth was overwhelming. Humans hadn't discovered other species and learned to live peacefully with them. They'd raised other species like parents raising children, carefully shaping galactic society over thousands of years. Jake Morrison stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The revelation of humanity's true nature had spread quickly through official channels, causing panic among many species. Representatives demanded explanations while others prepared for war. "We understand your fear," Jake said calmly. "We'd be afraid, too, if we discovered that everything we thought we knew was wrong." But Jake's voice carried new authority now that his memories had returned. He spoke with the wisdom of someone who'd spent lifetimes tending the galaxy like a garden. "You're not our subjects or our slaves. You're our success story. For 12,000 years, we've watched over galactic civilization, protecting it from threats that would have ended all life. We eliminated the monsters so that you could grow in peace." General Thex Moran of the Drachor stood up angrily. "You manipulated us. Everything we achieved, everything we built was because of your interference." "No," Jake replied. "We simply removed the obstacles that would have prevented you from achieving your potential. Every choice you made, every step forward your species took, came from your own nature. We just made sure you had the chance to make those choices." The council chamber erupted in arguments and accusations. Some species felt betrayed while others expressed gratitude. But underneath the chaos, there was a growing realization that the galaxy had been at peace for longer than any civilization could remember. Wars still happened, but they were small conflicts that got resolved quickly. Entire species weren't wiped out anymore. Aggressive civilizations either learned cooperation or simply disappeared before they could cause widespread destruction. The shepherds had been doing their job so well that most species had forgotten what real galactic chaos looked like. As Jake looked around the chamber, he felt the weight of humanity's true responsibility settling on his shoulders. The time of hiding was over. The galaxy was about to learn what it really meant, to live under the protection of the Souljin. Dr. Alice Thompson received special permission to access the Council's deep archives for her research on early human migration patterns. Alice was a historian who wanted to understand how humans had developed space travel so quickly compared to other species. What she discovered in the ancient records made her hands shake as she read. The name Souljin appeared in documents spanning 12,000 years of galactic history. Every single reference connected these beings to the sudden disappearance of species that had threatened the stability of civilized space. The pattern was always the same. Aggressive races would emerge, spread chaos across multiple systems, and then simply vanish without explanation. Alice found a Vorax prophecy tablet that made her blood run cold. The ancient text read, "When the children of the Third World remember their true name, the destroyers will walk among us again." The tablet was carved over 10,000 years ago, long before any known contact between Vorax and humans. But the most terrifying part was that the Vorax had drawn pictures alongside their prophecy. The images showed bipedal creatures that looked exactly like humans standing among the stars with tools that could reshape reality itself. Meanwhile, human expansion into the galaxy continued at a steady pace. New colonies appeared regularly, on worlds that seemed perfectly suited for human life. Captain Roy Martinez was leading another exploration mission when he made a discovery that changed everything he thought he knew about human history. On a planet called Kepler 442b, Roy's team found ruins of what could only be described as human cities. The architecture was definitely human in design, with familiar proportions and building styles that matched Earth construction from thousands of years ago. But the carbon dating results showed these ruins were over 8,000 years old. "This is impossible," said team archaeologist Jenny Foster as she examined the structures. "Humans didn't even have written language 8,000 years ago, let alone space travel." But the evidence was right in front of them. The cities were clearly built by humans for humans. The doorways were the right height, the stairs had the right proportions, and the room layouts followed patterns that human architects still use today. In the center of the largest city, Roy's team found a sealed chamber that had somehow remained untouched by time. Inside was a message written in perfect modern English on a metal surface that showed no signs of age or corrosion. The message read, "For our children when they're ready to remember. Phase 3 complete, standby protocols engaged, awaiting activation sequence. The garden grows well, the shepherds rest. When the time comes, you'll know what to do." Roy immediately sent the findings back to Earth. But the response from human authorities was strange. Instead of shock or confusion, the officials seemed almost relieved, as though they'd been expecting this discovery all along. Back on Earth, Dr. Susan Carter was monitoring energy readings from research facilities around the planet. The abandoned installations that had been drawing mysterious power were now showing activity levels that defied explanation. Computers that had been offline for decades were suddenly processing massive amounts of data. When Susan tried to access these facilities, she found that her security clearance was somehow already programmed into their systems. The computers recognized her biometric signature and welcomed her with messages she'd never seen before. "Welcome back, Doctor." Carter appeared on every screen she approached. "Phase 3 monitoring complete. Phase 4, preparation initiated. Please stand by for further instructions." Susan had never worked at these facilities and had no memory of programming these systems. Yet they knew her perfectly. Even worse, when she tried to leave, she found herself reluctant to go. Something deep in her mind was telling her that she needed to stay and continue work that she couldn't remember starting. Captain Lisa Brooks was experiencing similar strange occurrences during her patrol missions. Her ship Aurora had begun detecting energy signatures from locations that weren't supposed to exist. When she investigated, she found structures hidden in asteroid fields and behind planetary rings. These installations were clearly human in origin, but used technology far beyond anything in current human databases. When Lisa's crew boarded one of the structures, their equipment automatically interfaced with alien systems as though they'd been designed to work together. "Captain, these controls feel familiar," reported her engineer, Danny Walsh. "It's like I've used this technology before, but I know I haven't. My hands just seem to know where everything is." The installations contained massive databases filled with information about every species in the galaxy. The records went back thousands of years and included detailed behavioral analysis, genetic profiles, and cultural development patterns for civilizations that had been extinct for millennia. Most disturbing of all were the tactical assessments. Every aggressive species that had ever threatened galactic stability had been studied in incredible detail. The files contained complete battle plans for their elimination, along with notes about which methods would be most effective and cause the least collateral damage to innocent populations. Dr. Kevin Wright was having his own revelations during diplomatic missions. When he helped species resolve their conflicts, he was finding solutions that came from knowledge he shouldn't possess. During negotiations, he would reference historical events and cultural details that weren't in any human databases. The alien delegates often seemed surprised by his knowledge, but they never questioned it. It was as though they expected humans to understand things that other species couldn't grasp. Kevin began keeping a private journal of these incidents. He wrote about knowing ancient trade routes that weren't on any maps, understanding alien customs that had never been documented, and predicting species behavior with impossible accuracy. "Something is happening to me," Kevin wrote. "I'm remembering things I never learned. When I look at star charts, I see patterns that make no sense according to our current understanding of galactic history. But somehow I know these patterns are correct." Peter Grant's research into genetic preservation was yielding more disturbing results. The mathematical precision of the biological interventions he was studying suggested that someone had been managing evolution across the entire galaxy for thousands of years. Species that should have gone extinct had somehow survived with genetic modifications that made them more adaptable. Aggressive traits had been selectively reduced in many civilizations, while cooperative behaviors had been enhanced. "It's like someone has been breeding the entire galaxy for peace and stability," Peter told his research team. "The genetic modifications are subtle but consistent across hundreds of species. This isn't natural evolution." The modifications weren't random either. They followed patterns that suggested a single controlling intelligence had been guiding the process. Someone had been playing God with galactic civilization for millennia. Jake Morrison was reviewing reports from human colonies when he noticed another impossible pattern. Every single human settlement had been established on worlds that showed evidence of previous terraforming. The atmospheric processors were already in place. The soil had been prepared for Earth crops, and the orbital infrastructure was perfectly positioned for human needs. Colony administrators were reporting that they felt strangely at home on these worlds, as though they'd lived there before. Children born on the colonies often claimed to remember places they'd never visited and spoke about the old times when humans had traveled between the stars. Most disturbing was a report from the colony on Proxima 7. The children there had begun drawing pictures of ships and structures that matched the installations Lisa's team was finding hidden throughout the galaxy. When asked where they'd seen these things, the children all gave the same answer: "We remember from before we forgot." Keeper Zoth Kanesh had completed his investigation of the ancient archives. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. Humans weren't newcomers to galactic civilization. They were its architects, gardeners, and secret guardians. The old Eldera realized that every major positive development in galactic history could be traced back to subtle human intervention. They'd been managing civilization from the shadows for over 10,000 years, and now something was causing them to remember their true purpose. Zoth Kanesh made a decision that would change everything. It was time to confront the humans directly with what he'd discovered. Keeper Zoth Kanesh moved slowly through the ancient archives deep beneath the council chambers. The old Eldere had lived for over 3,000 years and had access to records that most beings had forgotten existed. His 4 arms carefully handled the data crystals that contained information from the earliest days of galactic civilization. Something was bothering him about the humans. In his long life, Zoth Kanesh had learned to trust his instincts when patterns appeared in the historical data. The humans had been part of the council for only 3 years, but references to their species appeared in much older records. The dates didn't make sense, but the evidence was there. The first strange document he found was a battle report from the ancient Souljin Empire. The recording was damaged and thousands of years old, but it showed bipedal creatures fighting alongside warriors called the Void Breakers. These legendary fighters had supposedly disappeared from the galaxy long before any current species had developed space travel. The bipedal creatures in the recording looked exactly like humans. They used similar tactics and moved in the same coordinated way that human rescue teams work today. But the battle report was dated over 8,000 years ago. Zoth Kanesh found more references as he dug deeper into the archives. Ancient military logs from 12 different civilizations mentioned creatures they called Souljin, which translated to "those who come from the sun's third child." The descriptions matched humans perfectly, but the dates were all wrong. Meanwhile, on Research Station Omega near the Centauri system, human scientist Peter Grant was making his own disturbing discovery. Peter studied alien biology and had been examining genetic samples from various extinct species around the galaxy. What he found made no sense according to current scientific understanding. Dozens of species that had supposedly died out naturally showed signs of careful genetic preservation. Their DNA contained markers that suggested someone had been actively maintaining biological diversity across multiple star systems. The mathematical precision of this preservation was incredible. Someone had been collecting and storing genetic information from thousands of species for millennia. The work would have required technology far beyond what any known civilization possessed. Even today, Peter ran the calculations again and again, but the results were always the same. The genetic preservation showed patterns of intervention spanning at least 10,000 years. Someone had been playing gardener with entire ecosystems across the galaxy. Captain Lisa Brooks was having her own strange experiences during patrol missions near the Void Nebula. Her ship Aurora was conducting routine scans of the area when her sensors detected massive energy signatures from what should have been empty space. When Lisa ordered her crew to investigate, the readings suddenly vanished. But several crew members reported seeing impossible things through the viewports. Danny Walsh swore he saw structures that existed between dimensions, ships that moved without any visible means of propulsion. "Captain, those symbols on the phantom vessels," Danny said as he reviewed the sensor recordings. "They match cave paintings from Earth, ancient ones from places like Lascaux and Altamira." "How is that possible?" Lisa studied the data herself. The symbols were definitely similar to prehistoric art from Earth, but the implications were terrifying. Either humans had been in space much longer than anyone knew, or something had been watching human development for thousands of years. The phantom ships appeared and disappeared without warning. When Aurora tried to follow them, the vessels simply vanished as though they'd never existed. But the energy signatures were real, and they were using technology that didn't match any known civilization. Back at Council headquarters, General Thex Morin of the Dracor hegemony was reviewing old tactical databases for his own reasons. The Dracor were the galaxy's most feared military power, and Thex Morin liked to study ancient battles to improve his strategies. He was looking into something called the Great Purge, a galactic cleansing event that had happened 5,000 years ago. According to the records, dozens of aggressive species had been completely eliminated during this period. The galaxy had become much more peaceful afterward. The strange thing about the Great Purge was that nobody knew who'd carried it out. The enemy species had been wiped out using weapons that defied understanding. Battle reports described impossible energy cascades and reality distortion fields that could destroy entire fleets in seconds. The beings responsible for the Great Purge were listed in the records only as unknown benefactors. They'd appeared suddenly, eliminated the threats to galactic peace, and then vanished without a trace. No one had ever figured out who they were or where they'd gone. Thex Morin found the mystery frustrating. As a military leader, he wanted to understand these weapons and tactics. But every time investigators had tried to learn more about the unknown benefactors, they found nothing but dead ends. Dr. Kevin Wright was also experiencing strange things during his diplomatic work. When he helped species solve their conflicts, solutions often came to him in ways he couldn't explain. It was as though the answers were already there in his mind, waiting to be discovered. During the recent dispute between the Nari and the Voss Collective, Kevin had suggested using ancient trade routes that weren't on any current star maps. When the Nari checked their historical records, they found that those exact routes had been used thousands of years ago by a species they couldn't identify. The routes were perfectly designed for efficient travel while respecting territorial boundaries. Someone had mapped them with incredible precision, taking into account factors that wouldn't be discovered by modern science for centuries. Human colonies were also expanding in strange ways. New settlements kept appearing on planets that seemed perfectly prepared for human habitation. Orbital platforms were already in place, atmospheric processors were running smoothly, and the infrastructure was exactly what humans needed. Colony leader Rachel Davis reported that her team on Kepler 442b had found evidence of previous human presence. "The terraform systems were already running when we arrived," she told Kevin during a communication session. "It's like someone knew we were coming and prepared everything in advance." Captain Roy Martinez of the exploration vessel Horizon made an even more disturbing discovery on the same planet. His team found ruins that looked exactly like human architecture, but carbon dating showed they were over 8,000 years old. Inside one of the ruined buildings, they found a message carved into metal that couldn't be destroyed by time or weather. The message was written in perfect English. "For our children when they're ready to remember." Phase 3 complete. Standby protocols engaged. Awaiting activation sequence. Roy reported the finding to Earth immediately, but officials there seemed as confused as everyone else. No one could explain how human ruins could exist on a planet that had supposedly never been visited before. Dr. Susan Carter was monitoring energy readings from Earth when she detected something that shouldn't exist. Several research facilities that had been abandoned for decades were suddenly drawing enormous amounts of power. The energy signatures were unlike anything in current human technology. When Susan tried to investigate, she found that the facilities were still listed as inactive in all official records. But the power consumption was real and growing stronger each day. Something was waking up in those old installations. The most shocking discovery came when Keeper Zoth Kainesh found a complete genetic profile for humans in the deepest archives. The file was labeled Stellar Shepherds, Status Hibernate, and was dated 12,000 years old. The genetic profile was perfect, including details about human psychology, social behavior, and technological development patterns. It was as though someone had been studying humans for thousands of years before they were supposed to exist as a spacefaring species. Zoth Kainesh realized that everything the Council knew about human history was wrong. They weren't newcomers to the galaxy at all. Jake Morrison walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers. The human ambassador felt small next to the giant alien beings around him. His team of 12 humans looked tiny compared to the other species that filled the Great Hall. The council meeting was about to start. Jake had been coming here for 3 years now, ever since humanity joined the galactic community. The humans were still new to all of this. They were considered a minor species from a small system called Sol. The discovery of Earth had happened by accident. A Zenturi exploration ship found humans living peacefully on their third planet. The aliens were surprised to find another intelligent species, but humans seemed harmless enough. They had basic ships that could travel faster than light, simple weapons, and a strange habit of helping others without asking for anything back. The Council had voted to let humans join their group. Most alien species saw them as useful for small jobs like trade talks and solving arguments between other races. Humans were good at finding middle ground when others wanted to fight. Captain Lisa Brooks stood near the back of the chamber. She'd just returned from another rescue mission in her ship called Aurora. A Coran trading vessel had been attacked by space pirates near the Outer Rim. Lisa and her crew arrived just in time to save them. The Corans were grateful but confused. This was the 4th time in 2 months that humans had shown up to help someone in trouble. The aliens wondered how humans always seemed to know when help was needed. Human ships were not very advanced, and their scanning systems were basic compared to other species. Dr. Kevin Wright sat at the human section of the council floor. He was humanity's chief science representative. Kevin had a gift for talking to different alien species and helping them understand each other. In the past year, he'd stopped 2 wars before they could start. The first conflict was between the Allen Republic and the Voss Collective over mining rights in the Kepler system. Both sides were ready to fight, but Kevin found a way for them to share the resources. The second problem was a trade dispute that nearly caused the Riel Alliance to break apart again. Kevin helped them find a solution that worked for everyone. Kevin never took credit for these successes. He always said he was just using basic human common sense. Other species found this puzzling because what seemed obvious to humans was often impossible for them to see. The council chamber filled with the usual noise of different alien languages. The Zenturi made clicking sounds with their 4 arms. The Dracor spoke in deep growls that made the floor vibrate. The small Vorax chirped like birds, but much louder. Jake looked around at all the different species. The tall, blue-skinned Allen with their graceful movements. The rock-like Coran, who moved slowly but thought carefully about everything. The insect-like Sarin with their compound eyes that could see in all directions at once. Humans were different from all of them. They were smaller than most species, had no special abilities like telepathy or natural armor, and their technology was basic. Yet somehow they'd become important to the Council in just 3 years. The meeting began with reports from different sectors. There was news about trade routes, mining operations, and border disputes. Jake listened carefully to everything, taking notes on his simple tablet computer. High Chancellor Vex Marine of the Zenturi called for the human report. Jake stood up and walked to the speaking platform. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's translation system. Humans have completed 17 aid missions this quarter, Jake reported. We helped rebuild the Vorax colony on Kepler 7 after the earthquake. Our medical teams treated the plague outbreak in the Real sector. Captain Brooks and her crew rescued the Corin traders from pirates near Tidy. The alien delegates listened with interest. Some made notes while others whispered to their assistants. The reports were always the same. Humans helping others, solving problems, and asking for very little in return. We also want to report that our exploration teams have found 3 new systems suitable for colonization, Jake continued. We're sharing these coordinates with all council members as usual. This was another thing that puzzled other species. Humans discovered new worlds regularly, but never claimed them for themselves. They always offered to share the information with everyone else. After Jake finished his report, he returned to his seat. The meeting continued with discussions about trade agreements and security concerns. Dr. Wright was called to help solve another dispute between the Voss Collective and a smaller species called the Nari. The problem was about shipping lanes through Nari space. The Voss wanted to use their territory for faster trade routes, but the Nari were worried about their privacy and security. Both sides had valid concerns. Kevin listened to both arguments carefully. Then he suggested a simple solution. The Voss could use the shipping lanes, but they'd pay a small fee to the Nari for passage. Part of that money would go toward improving Nari security systems. This way, the Voss got their fast routes, and the Nari got better protection, plus income from the arrangement. Both sides agreed quickly. What had seemed like an impossible problem was solved in less than an hour. Captain Brooks was thinking about her recent missions while the meeting continued. The rescue of the Corin traders had been strange. Her ship's computers had detected the distress signal from very far away, much farther than their sensors should have been able to reach. When Aurora arrived at the scene, the pirates were using advanced jamming technology. Yet somehow Lisa's crew knew exactly where to find the trapped Corin ship. Her navigator, Danny Walsh, said it felt like he'd been to that location before, even though the star charts showed it was unexplored space. The pirates had been surprised by Aurora's arrival. They fled without a fight, which was unusual. Most pirates would at least try to defend their prize, especially against a single human ship with basic weapons. These kinds of strange coincidences happened often during human missions. They'd arrive at exactly the right time, know exactly what to do, and somehow always succeed even when the odds were against them. The council meeting ended after 4 hours. As the various species filed out of the chamber, many stopped to talk with the human delegates. They wanted to thank Kevin for his help or ask Lisa about her rescue techniques. Jake watched his team interact with the aliens. Humans had earned respect in the galactic community through their actions, not their technology or military power. They were seen as honest, reliable, and surprisingly effective despite their limitations. But deep in the restricted archives beneath the council chambers, something was stirring. Ancient records that had been forgotten for thousands of years were being reviewed by Keeper Zoth Kanesh, one of the last surviving Eldere. The old keeper had noticed patterns in the historical data. References to a species from the Sol system appeared in records much older than first contact with humans. The dates didn't make sense, but the evidence was there. Zoth Kanesh made a note to investigate further. Something about the humans didn't add up, and the ancient Eldere had learned long ago that coincidences were rarely random in the galaxy.